guys, it's Hannah and this is Bookworms Talk, and today I am going to talk about November 9 by Colleen Hoover. I've thought about this long and hard whether or not it is my favorite book that she's written. If you're familiar with my channel, you guys know that Slammed is the book that started it all for me, and that is like my, I guess, long-time favorite book of hers. And I got the chance to read this, and oh my god, I think it's tied, if not surpassing. But I love the hell out of this book, and I'm going to tell you what it's about. So our protagonists, Ben and Fallon, end up meeting on the day that Fallon is about to move cross-country to New York from California. It is a very interesting way that they meet, to say the least. Ben interrupts a conversation, I'm being very vague here, and kind of helps her out, and then there's this mutual attraction, and they end up spending the day together, and I think they even go back to her place to pack up her stuff. But there's just like, there's that something there that makes them want to like spend their time together. I mean, like, it's only one day, what can it really hurt? So Ben is an aspiring novelist and Fallon is an actress. Hence why she's moving to New York, because Broadway. But Fallon's not gonna not move to New York just because she meets this one guy that there could be something there with. I mean, they're very young. I think they're both 18 in the beginning of the novel. I say very young, I'm not old. But my point being, she still moves to New York and they kind of make this pact to meet again once a year. Whether he go to her or her go to him, like they want to see each other again on the day that they met a year from now. And so that's sort of where the book flies from. So because they met on November 9th, every November 9th after, one flies to LA or one flies to New York and they catch up with each other's lives. And they chose not to communicate in the time between just because they didn't want it to feel like this obligatory kind of thing, and they didn't really know if this was gonna go anywhere. And because it was going to be cross country and they were so young, they're like, this is stupid to try to like tie down and I don't really know you, and so it's like, in a year we'll reacquaint and we'll see what happens. I love the idea of this book so much. When the entire thing was introduced of, oh, we'll come back in a year at the same place at this time and da-da-da-da, I was brought back to like one of my all-time favorite movies, Before Sunrise. It was a Richard Linklater film, or Linklater, I think is how you say his name. Not to say that it's like similar, but like that concept of they'll come back in a year, and I was like, but it's done so differently, so not quite the same at all, but it was just like, it sparked my memory. But anyway, back to the book. So like I said before, Ben is an aspiring novelist, and he kind of takes inspiration from how they met, and he writes this story over the years of them, which still reminds me of the Before Sunrise movie so hard. Which again, I'm sorry, like I know the book is not like the movies, but the writing, being a writer thing, reminds me again of Before Sunset, which is the second movie in that series. Oh my god, it's just so good. You need to watch the movies if you're a fan of this book. And as hopeful, I guess, as this book sounds, there's a lot of bad that happens. And then over the years, like, they kind of start questioning each other, but really more like Fallon questioning Ben, and she's not sure if he's still meeting her every year because he wants to, or if it's like for some kind of fabricated plot line. It gets messy, but I really freaking loved this book. It's up there with me. I like it more than Slammed, but I feel like Slammed has so much nostalgia attached to it for me, and that's, I mean, not to say that Slammed isn't good, but you know, like how like your longtime favorite something is like, yes, I really like this too, but I've liked this for so long and it holds that place. You know what I mean? Anyway, I was such a huge fan. I'll say it again. I think you need to buy it. I think everyone needs to buy it. It was just brilliant. So that is about it for the non-spoiler section. So if you don't want to be spoiled, which you shouldn't want to be, because I was very vague in the summary. So when you pick up the book, you'll be like, the fuck, Hannah, you didn't tell me this. And I'm like, I know I didn't. I didn't spoil you. So really, I highly encourage you to not listen to the spoiler section if you're gonna read this book, because it kind of ruins a lot of it. I left a lot out. So really, I'm warning you, don't like read this because you started reading it and you're like, oh, I want to see how it goes, because I've had people tell me that before. Like, so I will see you guys later next time on Bookworms Talk when you have read this. Bye. We're gonna get personal for a second. So when Ben slid in the booth after eavesdropping on Fallon and her father's like conversation, and he like slid in there and pretended to be her boyfriend and everything, and the day I started reading this, and this is what I mean by personal, I was such a wreck. Like, emotionally, my self-confidence was like at a big time low. At the time that I was reading this, which was a while before this video was actually up, but like I was in a bad place. That gesture, it brought me to tears. Like, I was reading this, I think I was on campus that day, and I was walking between classes, and I was like, and I had to stop, and I needed to read it, and I teared up a lot. At the time that I read this, it fit so perfectly with how I felt myself. I don't know, I really related to it, and so I think that's why this book kind of hit me in a really special way. All right, so on to something a little bit lighter. I'm also a writer. I'm telling you all kinds of stuff in this video. So I'm a writer, and I've always been a writer. I wrote like a book about bugs when I was a kid. So I guess I've been a writer for a while, but I've been like seriously writing since I was about 15. I'm 21. And so this part with Ben, oh, I have to read it because I do the same thing. And I'm like, I don't feel alone in the world. I'm not very good with on-the-spot motivational speeches. Sometimes at night, I'll rewrite conversations I had during the day, but I'll change them up to reflect everything I wish I could have said in the moment. But when Ben would talk to her, especially in the very beginning when they first met, I mean, it continued on, but especially here, that time that he was in her closet, and I think he like dressed her or something. It was a weird thing, but it was all to show like, I still think you're beautiful. And he did these different things to kind of prove to her that she's not the way she thinks she is in her head. So again, still on the first November 9th, when they were kind of making the whole deal of going back every November 9th and seeing each other again. They're going back and forth like, well, I mean, what do we really expect? Like, let's talk about this a little. And Ben says, what if one of us falls in love with someone else? Won't that ruin the end of the book if we don't end up together? And then Fallon said, whether or not the couple ends up together at the end of the book doesn't determine whether the book has a happy ending or not. As long as the two people end up happy, it doesn't really matter if they're happily together. And that freaked me out in that moment, because I know that Colleen likes to write like happy ending books. And I thought, so that she just made that sound like that's a happy ending. And I'm like, that's not in typical Colleen happy ending. So I really loved that she had that in there, because I was like, oh god, what if it doesn't happily end? Because this is like the happy ending. I'm like, what if this is like her new real life kind of happy ending? Like I don't know. I went everywhere with that, and so it was like this nice level of suspense, because typically I can go into a book expecting like, it will be okay in the end. Don't worry too much. I mean, you still worry a little, but like at this point I was like, okay, something about being fluttery inside. I loved this part. So the first time when they were leaving and they were kind of going back and forth between like, oh, a book-worthy goodbye type of thing, and he just drops her at the curb, and it seems very casual, typical, like that's how I drop people off the airport. I'm like, bye, see ya, drive off. And so he runs into the airport yelling, Fallon. I turn around and see Ben is standing in the revolving door. He begins running toward me in slow motion. I cover my mouth with my hand to try not to laugh as he slowly stretches an arm out like he's reaching out for me. He's yelling, don't go yet, as he moves slowly through the crowd of people. And it was so funny, and it was really like dramatically sweet. And like to me, I would be like horrified, but also I think I would react quite similarly to how she would be like horrified, but I would also think it's so funny that I probably wouldn't care that much. Alright, so now we're getting into this drama. This drama? Alright, that's a new way to say drama. So then the 3rd November, when Kyle died, that's I think when the book really took this turn. And so Ben wasn't able to go to New York like planned, and then I thought, no, you can't skip to the next November. But it doesn't, and she ends up flying out to LA to be with him and kind of, or be there for him, I guess is the right way to say it. And I mean, his death alone would have been bad, but it was, I think, 3 months before him and Jordan were gonna have their first kid. So it was just, Okay, so on this 3rd November when Kyle died, still the same November, they sleep together and decide that it's just kind of like, screw the deal. And then Ben is saying like, I want to move to New York, like I want to be near you, and I mean, now that Kyle isn't here, Jordan's gonna be moving back with her parents, and like the house, like I can just sell it, it's fine, like no one needs it, and his other brother is always traveling. He's like, I want to be with you, I'll move to New York, because that's where you are. And so it's kind of like this bit of happy, and then Fallon ends up going downstairs and running into Jordan, and Jordan's upset, and she doesn't want to move home with her mom, and then Fallon is just, instantly she feels so bad for Jordan, but also it meant that Ben is going to have to stay here in the house, and he's not going to be able to be with her. And she realizes that it's really selfish of her to ask or to let Ben move to New York when Jordan needs him. And she also found out via Jordan that Ben had an agent for this book that he's been writing, which was part of the deal, which I forgot to mention, but you've read this so you know. And she doesn't want him to like give up these opportunities. And so she feels, and this is the stupid part, but I also get it, but it's so stupid. It's more like just character frustration. She thinks that if they continue doing this every November 9th they see each other thing, that it would be good for the book because it would feel more genuine. And I'm like, bullshit, you fictionalize something. But so it's like that, and then the Jordan thing, it all piles up. And so she gets a cab, she tries leaving, and then there's sort of this argument that they have, and they leave on really, really bad terms. And Ben is just, oh, I felt so bad for him. He's thinking that all of this has been one-sided and that she doesn't really like love him or like feel about him the same way that he feels about her. Oh man, on the November 4th, it just went really hard downhill, as if it wasn't downhill before, but it really hurt. And so when she meets him, Ben has Oliver with him, and then there was like this one phrase that he said that like it clicked for her, and it was just like, oh. She just knew that he was with Jordan, and then she just, and I mean, how are we to like root against Jordan after what she's been through? And so it's like, you're just frustrated and you're just more mad at life than you are the person. And I really, really like how that's done, because a lot of the times it isn't like how books portray it or movies portray it. It's this other woman who's like this bad person. Like, no, it's just like me or you. I mean, yeah, there's a history with, anyway, but she's still a good person. She doesn't make her out to be a bad person, which I really appreciate. And so they leave on really bad terms because Fallon is just devastated, and she says, I'm done. I don't want to meet again. This is the last November. I'm not coming back. Ben's mom, man. I'm not even going to try to talk about that a lot because it's upsetting. The book explained it perfectly. I don't even have anything else to say about it. I don't have anything to say about it. I think the book handled it perfectly. I think the explanation of it from both sides was perfectly done, and it fucking sucked. And that's how Fallon's dad is tied, Donovan, I think is his name, I remember now, is tied in with his mother, and they were like a thing, and then he went and he set the fire, and Ben set the fire, thinking that it was Donovan's fault that his mother killed herself, and it seems like that, it makes sense, but then the letter was different. Oh my god, it was so much fucked up stuff that was just like back to back to back. And at that whole point, I was just like, no, And I mean, Fallon kind of thinks the same way. How dare him to fictionalize the most tragic thing that's happened in my life? But then she's like, it could only be worse if it were true. Which it is. And so then the last November, she does show up. And she came with like 3 minutes to spare. And he had dropped off the manuscript, I think, the day before. And he was just like, she's had enough time to read it, and like, she's not going to show up. And it is like kind of corny, but like, I love it. It's cheesy and beautiful. I like cheese. Cheese was my favorite dairy product. But I loved this book so much. I surprisingly liked that it was only told like on these November 9ths, and we do get like history of what's happened throughout the year. But at first, when it went from the first November 9th to the second, I'm like, wait, I don't get more. I want the in-between. But then I'm like, do I want the in-between? Like, I'm just gonna keep an open mind. And I ended up really, really liking it. I had a little bit of doubt at first, but it was done so well. So I'm such a huge fan of this. I know that I'm gonna be giving this out as Christmas presents to quite a few friends if they don't pick it up themselves. I loved this book. I have nothing else to say about it, but I do want to know your favorite parts. And if you have any like spoilers, please be sure to like say spoiler in like all caps and like do a couple asterisks or something funny like that. But I do want to talk to you guys down there in the comments. Just comment down there and I'll respond to you. But be sure to not have your thing set on private, because sometimes I don't have the option to reply. I can only like thumbs up your comment, and then I'm like, I can't tell you what I'm thinking. Also, I've read all of Colleen's books, like every single one of them. So if you want to know my opinion on any of her other books, I will have a playlist with them linked up here in the card, as well as some stuff down there in the description with like direct links to specific videos. So like one for Ugly Love, one for Slammed, one for Point of Retreat, and Hopeless, and Ugly Love. I already said Ugly Love, but yeah, all of them. So I will see you guys later next time on Bookworm Stock. Bye! This is not the time to commemorate Ariel. You are going to behave for 3 more minutes. That is all I ask. Bestowing wisdom upon you people. You people. Hey, all you people. Hey, all you people.
Hey, all you people, would you listen to me? Something about a sandwich, not an ordinary sandwich. A sandwich filled with jellyfish jelly.
Yeah, I break out into SpongeBob songs.